Babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Happy Friday. What's up? What's up? What's up? Sorry, Callow, the capital season has come to a thud of an end, which obviously I'll talk football first, but sad ending last night. Not surprised. Yesterday when I did a segment about it, I'm like, let's brace for this is the end because the series really they had been outclassed pretty badly. And I want to talk about in the end, I thought that they quickly spun. We had a really great, memorable year. And I agree with that. This was a thud of an ending for sure, but like it was. And on the whole, they did bring me back off the edge of, wow, that was a terrible end to the season. But there was a lot of things that really made this year special. So, I'll hear both sides of that.
No, I absolutely will, especially with how nobody picked them to be this good. They were the second best team in the league. They were competing for a President's Trophy. Expectations changed, like they did that literally, over the course of the season, that they became one of the best teams in hockey while chasing this record that you and I have talked about for years and years. They did it both. Like we said, how are they going to tote this line? If you would have told me that when Alex Ovechkin broke the record, they were still going to be competing for first place in one of the teams in the best teams in the NHL, and you told me that 2 years ago, I would have called you crazy.
Yeah,
they went and threaded that needle, and look, they lost to a better team. This wasn't like a Penguin series where it was so razor thin, where you feel so dejected after a game 6 or 7 losing to those guys. Carolina beat them up and down the ice. Oh. I said yesterday on my show, if they were not up going into the third period, it was a lost cause. It essentially was. So yeah.
It played out as a mismatch. I mean, that's real, and that's rare in hockey, just in general. It's also rare to see this team be in what felt like a mismatch without some extenuating circumstances. But whatever, it's done, and so we'll revisit it in a little bit. I would typically, because we haven't talked about the schedule yet, which obviously came out on Wednesday, which I'll do in a minute. But the bombshell that came out yesterday is where I really want to start, which is Caleb Williams. There is a book coming out by Seth Wickersham. We live this forever. If Seth Wickersham or Don Van Natta are writing about you, you're in trouble, okay? Like you're in real trouble. Thankfully, we're not in the crosshairs of this time. The Bears are, and there are quotes that have already been released out of this book that Seth Wickersham has that's largely just about quarterbacks in general. And it broadly talks about a lot of quarterbacks, but it is going to hearken up John Elway, who refused to play for the Colts and forced to trade back in the 1980s, Eli Manning, who refused to play for the Chargers and ultimately forced to trade and ended up going to the Giants. And now Caleb Williams, who not so secretly before the draft, and really a year before the draft, remember, his dad did interviews where he stated, because he had a year of eligibility left, he might not come out at all. This was before knowing who would have the number 1 overall pick. So they had kind of set the groundwork, not unlike what Dion did with Shedeur, which I'll get to in a minute. There's a lot of parallels here as to why Shedeur maybe fell the way he fell. But Caleb Williams clearly, because there are quotes in this book, made it abundantly clear that he wanted to try to direct where he was going to go. And once Chicago got the first overall pick, he and his father made it almost abundantly clear to anybody who would listen he did not want to go there. And the Bears stood their ground and said, we're taking him anyway, which is going to, I could already hear sports radio today going, we should have taken Jaden Daniels. We should have taken Jaden, because think about that for just a minute. I'll go back to Caleb in a minute. Think about the season that Daniels had. Think about how good of a prospect Drake May was coming into the season too. I don't think you could have come around to, we'll pick McCarthy, Nix, or Penix over those 3. But I did an interview with a guy in Chicago the other day, and I said, because he was like, did you want Caleb? And I'm like, sure. He was from here. Obviously, he's extremely talented, but we had incredible options. And all things being equal now, we're totally psyched with the guy that we got. We're not missing out on him. Chicago had these options, locked in on Williams, and amazingly, clearly knew for a long time he didn't want to play for them, and they took him anyway. And they could have had Daniels or May, who would have eagerly gone to, or at least we think, eagerly gone to them and played for them. So this is just another, I think this is not only a knock on Caleb, because you have to answer a lot of questions about this, but it's a knock on their management, because in the end, Daniels had a way better rookie season than Williams did, and they could have had him. And the guy they picked, who they just basically said, you're a prisoner here, there's nothing you can do about it, didn't want to be there. It's unbelievable.
It's not only about Daniels, it's about all the other quarterbacks too. Like you already mentioned Drake May. I'll go one step further and go Bo Nix had a great season. There's a reason why Bo Nix is playing the Commanders on Sunday Night Football this year because they had such a great
But Bo Nix, they couldn't pick him number one.
No.
People would have lost.
I know.
Their only real choice under the scenario, they could have taken Daniels and they might have gotten criticized and they might have ended up being right. They could have taken Drake May and everybody would have been like, well, you've just decided he's the best. You couldn't take Nix.
No.
You couldn't take him.
What I was getting at there is they could have traded down and still gotten their franchise quarterback.
They could have. But if they traded down and got rid of Fields, people would have been like, what world are you guys doing? Right?
That's fair. So that's the first thing I'll say too, is like they could have traded down and picked almost any of them. The only one that we don't know about, honestly, is Caleb because they're going through all these changes, and JJ McCarthy. All the other ones look to be legitimate NFL starters. We don't know what the ceiling is going to be for a couple of them. I think we've started to see the ceiling with Jaden Daniels just because of how good he was, but almost all of them were good. So this is the other thing is I've jokingly said this about the NFL. I think they're trying to push this quarterback class as one of the greatest ever already. Like you see the matchups, you see where they're putting them in prime time. You see how fast they all have performed compared to, I always make fun of the one draft that was your boy Trevor Lawrence, was Trey Lance. Who else was in that draft? That was Mac Jones. Like, remember that one was supposed to be really good, and they all were duds, essentially. And now this one comes out, and right away, they're all really good. But they have the biggest question mark, I think, out of all of them, because he was the first overall pick, and we just haven't seen enough out of him yet. So that's the other side of that. To go to the Williams camp, by the way, his dad wasn't wrong with the quote, that's where quarterbacks go to die. I mean, that's where Washington was for the longest time.
I mean, but Daniels and his mom, who's extremely involved in his day-to-day, could have said the same thing about Washington because it had been forever since Washington had a quarterback that did that. As far as I know, I think he wanted to be here. But, who knows? Like,
remember
the Williams stuff, like, you could have predicted that he was trying to navigate where he wanted to go. I never heard a thing like this about Daniels, about trying to navigate where he wanted to be. I never heard a thing about anything like that.
We did hear a little bit that, remember, he did want to go to the Raiders. There was a little, blurb about that.
Because he played for Antonio Pierce in college.
Right. But what I'm saying is we heard a blurb about that. We didn't hear about him possibly researching into circumventing the CBA not to go to Washington, which is exactly what Seth Wickersham is reporting, that they were exploring signing with the UFL to try to get around being drafted to Chicago. So that is a different scenario. That's totally different.
I mean, the crazy part is, knowing what they know now, they would have taken Jaden Daniels in a second.
Yes.
And been like, oh, you don't want to be here? Fine. We're going to take the current Heisman Trophy winner. We're going to take him. And then it does come down to, would Daniels have had the rookie season he had with that coaching staff, which what sounds like not much of a support system going on for them? I've said this forever. It's not just your talent. You have to go to the right place. After hearing and reading that Caleb actually really wanted to go to Minnesota after he met KOC, then I'm now suddenly going, I believe that he's going to turn McCarthy into a pretty good player. On your Bo Nix example, I think he ended up in the perfect place because he got the perfect coach for him. Sean Payton had an incredible run with Drew Brees. Bo Nix has very similar skill sets to Drew Brees. It doesn't mean he's going to be him. Drew Brees is one of the all-time leading passers and a surefire Hall of Famer. So it's a long way to go to say he's going to have a career like that, but he ended up in the perfect place with the perfect coach who knows how to do this. As it turned out, Daniels coming here with Kingsbury ended up being a really, really, really good thing to happen for him. Drake May, we're going to have to see because they've changed coaches already. And Caleb, we're going to have to see. Man, I said this a year ago. I don't know whether Eberflus deserves it or not, but they really need to clean slate this immediately because you need to get the right guy in with Caleb from the jump, or if things go wrong, this is what's going to happen. And then he starts over, and then you better get it right the second time or it just goes sideways. We saw this with Haskins here and others in the past where if you get it wrong at a spot where a guy is on a hot seat, they better get it right, but it's too big of a bet. And unfortunately, it went sideways. And then you're reading some of these quotes where they're like, He never watched film with people. He wasn't getting a lot of direction. There's a foreshadowing quote of he didn't believe in this offensive coordinator, which to me, again, this really points more to, I'll get to Caleb because he's got to answer a lot of questions about this now. And now forever, if things don't go right, they're never going to believe you wanted to be there in the first place. It's such a terrible narrative to have for your career. But it really points back to the management of the Bears, where it's like, okay, so he clearly expressed to you that he had a lot of reservations. He clearly tried to go. It's not like you didn't know that he told agents or others that he was going to try to circumvent you if you were going to hold his feet to the fire. And then it's clear that he didn't like the offensive coordinator. Why didn't you make a change to make him comfortable walking in the door? See, like this actually reads a lot more to me about the Bears management, the structure that they've put together, that they couldn't figure out a way to make him appeased to be like, look, I know what you know about us, but we're changing things around here because we believe in you. Not only did they say, we don't care that you have reservations, we're going to pick you. We're not even going to do anything about the things you're worried about here to make this better for you. And then, of course, it played out as bad as it did. He was right. Like that's the craziest part of the whole thing, because it sounds terrible. You're not supposed to say this. I can't believe they're on the record in this book admitting to all of this. Like, I can't believe they're admitting this because he does have at least 3-4 more years there. Like, there's nothing's going to change that. He's got the coach he wants now, so that's not going to change now. It's all water under the bridge, but you know what's happening on sports radio and with the columnists in Chicago today. And if they don't come out and start winning very quickly, the narrative about him is Caleb, who never wanted to be here, keeps losing here. It's a tough spot to be. I more look at this and I go, Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, the Bears management, like everything he was worried about actually turned out to be true concerns, and you guys did nothing about it before you picked him. How could you do that?
No, I mean, what I think this starts with is last year when all of us, even people that like us that weren't in Chicago, were going, why did they keep Eberflus in that coaching staff? Like, yeah, they had a good second half of the year where they showed a little bit, but we had all kind of known they were cooked. And if you have a first overall pick incoming, you hit the reset button. Like, that is the normal thing you do. No one would have knocked you for it. Like, you and I make fun of the Giants these days because they're afraid to make a move because they got firing head coaches, right? Well, Chicago, that's the one time you literally have the excuse to fire a whole entire coaching staff to hit the reset button. I think that's what like Caleb and his dad are basically saying here too, is we didn't want to be a part of this coaching staff or have this coaching staff be a part of year one. We saw the writing on the wall. And what happened? It wasn't even that Matt Eberflus was like a mediocre head coach. He was a bad decision maker too. Like halfway through the year, we heard about how things not only after the Hail Mary, but after that game in Detroit, everything went off the rails with them. So they saw the writing on the wall with what was going on in the organization. And as you said, they were right about it. So yes. Honestly, that's the other side of this. I honestly wanted to go back to, because last offseason, I think we talked about the draft and these players, I think more than any other year, because you and I and everyone in this town knew how much, this draft was going to mean, and all the quarterbacks that were available. Like, we got to debate about what quarterback they were going to take for months on end, right? Because of the pick of where they were at, and they needed a quarterback. How long did you and I talk about, well, Caleb hasn't explicitly come out and said he wants to go to Chicago. Like, remember, it was a week before the draft, and like, we were still kind of waiting for the Schefter. It's known the Bears are going to take him. The Titans knew they were picking Cam Moore 2 or 3 weeks before the draft this year. And then everything started to settle down and we had more discussions. This makes sense, though. Like, given what the reporting was a year ago of they weren't saying it out loud, but you could tell they were trying to work their options a little bit here. This just confirms that they actually were trying to not be drafted by Chicago or try to explore their options, because last year, I remember we talked about it at length. What if Caleb drops to 2? Duh, you take him.
You take him. Yes.
Now all of a sudden it kind of makes sense.
Think about that, though. Like, did he want to come back here knowing that this is a place that had not procured long-term success out of great quarterbacking skill? And like, in the end, it would have been a really good place for him to go. But remember, even he and Kingsbury, it was like not really known exactly what the relationship was. Granted, Kingsbury wasn't his OC at USC, but was in the building and was working with them. And it was very lukewarm if you kind of just asked about it. So Caleb obviously is somewhat of a piece of work. Like that goes without saying here. He also believes, and I also believe that he's got extraordinary talent. And even when I did this interview with the guy in Chicago the other day, before I heard about all of this, I'm like, I actually think he's going to end up being really good. I know there's probably some reservations, but I'm like, I know what I know about this guy. He's got extraordinary talent. So my one fear with him, with Ben Johnson, is Ben Johnson is a very on schedule like coach. Everything you do is on schedule. I think that's why Goff really works there, because he works as an on schedule quarterback. Caleb has some specific skill sets that lend him to extending plays, maybe not running it exactly the way you want to run it. And I think that timing part of it is actually going to be friction for them to try to work through. But I do think in the end, they've got the right guy with the, like, if he's got the right demeanor to try to get this guy on board, and they can take advantage, and the light switch will go on for Caleb. I think he's going to end up being a very, very good player. I think he's an extraordinary talent. I do worry about that part of it, where I've watched the Lions here, and everything they do is very much on time. Caleb's not an on-time player. That's why he was sacked so much a year ago. Doesn't get rid of the ball fast enough. We got to figure out, like, he's going to improvise a lot more. I think he learned the speed of a game is very different than in college last year, and maybe it'll change for him. But this all totally makes sense. I can't believe they're on the record talking about it, because now the damage is done. I mean, they're basically saying to you, and a lot of it came true, he didn't really want to be there. He was concerned about the infrastructure. The infrastructure was a mess. It was a house of cards. It did fall apart. They did have to make all these changes. He has to do a reboot to his career with a coach he should have had in the first place. Like, not the, maybe not Ben, but somebody in the first place should have been there ground zero with him. Now they got to do this. And it's difficult. Now, for the Bears the Bears have to be sitting there kicking themselves going, well, we could have had Drake May or Jaden Daniels, and either one of them could have ended up being just as good, if not better. But they drew a line in the sand and said, we don't care. As Tomlin would say, we have volunteers. We don't have hostages. They had a hostage in him. They basically said, we're going to take you. We don't care what you think about it. As for the NFL, they have to step in. They know what's going on too. And they cannot let the players start to dictate where they go, circumventing the CBA, trying to circumvent the draft. They have to take a full-on stand. If they let anybody of this level do this, then the door is wide open for everybody to do it. And you might as well not even have a draft when it comes to quarterbacks, because they'll all start dictating where exactly they want to go. I think this happened with Shedeur. Like, I'm sorry. The reason why he fell where he fell was it so abundantly clear throughout the process that he actually only wanted to play for a few specific places. And we may never know where those places are. And those places either wanted him or they didn't. And then he bombed some of these interviews and some of these places because he didn't want to go there. There's all these reports about how the Giants basically were like, this was a terrible, terrible interview and experience with him. That was done on purpose. Like, what do you think? Of course it was. They all but admitted that. And this one backfired to an extraordinary degree. I think this story is similar to Shedeur, but I said this a week ago or 2 weeks ago when the draft happened, and I go, here's the difference. Everyone thinks Caleb Williams is going to be great. Not everyone thinks Shedeur is going to be great. So you're not going to put up with nonsense from somebody you are uncertain is going to be really good. Chicago basically said, we know how good you are. You can hem and haw and complain all you want. Get used to living in this city. This is where you're going to be. Shedeur, I think, tried to pull very similar things, but the league doesn't see him that way. And I think they're right. They should. He's not Caleb Williams. So they basically said to him, sorry, buddy, like, you don't want to be here. You're going to be a pain in the butt. You're going to try to dictate terms. We don't think you're good enough to do that. And that's why he fell where he fell. Caleb was never getting out of the top two because his talent was too good, even if he and his dad were saying all these things and trying to do all these things.
Yeah, I mean, the other side of this, too, is this is the league probably also kind of saying behind the scenes, it's freaking Chicago. It's a top 10 market. Like, if you're good enough and you get them out of the doldrums, you become a legend. Like, I joked about this last year where we had kind of not heard where he wanted to go for sure, right? And I remember thinking, if you're a good enough quarterback, you make it work anywhere. And if you bring that franchise to prominence, you all of a sudden become the same, go into the same breath as Michael Jordan in that city, essentially. And remember, like, he did have a quote. I think Wickersham had a quote of basically, he did say, I want to do this in Chicago. Like, eventually he did come around to eventually saying that. And that's where I had landed on this as well, was like, okay, you can tell me you want to go to Minnesota, but if you're the greatest Minnesota quarterback, your ceiling as a superstar, like, globally, I don't know what that reaches. I do know in Chicago, if you become the greatest quarterback in that franchise's history, you're invincible. So, like, that's where I landed on this last year a little bit as well, was why would you not want to give it a go in Chicago? And to the other side of all this, too, of, like, being successful, go look at what Drake May was handed last year. Crappy offensive line, a head coach that was clearly in over his head, and then changing the offense over and everything resetting to year 2. But you and I and all the other analysts go, we saw enough from Drake May. He's good enough. He was fine. And they improved their offensive line and got Stephon Diggs and all these other things. We saw enough. Caleb still has all these questions out there too. And I think it's going to be better with a revamped offensive line of Ben Johnson. But I would say out of all the quarterbacks drafted outside of JJ, because he hasn't played yet, they're the most questions about Caleb. So it kind of takes 2 to tango here as well when it comes down to, are you good enough or not? The Bears probably also were going, if you're good enough, you're going to make it work here. And we just haven't even seen if that's happening yet. And I know it's year 2, but still, that's part of the narrative here as well.
Listen, I've been doing this too long. I know what's going to happen. So the media is going to be like on him.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And here's, let me tell you something. Williams family, step 1. You got to do an interview about this immediately with a major outlet. It can be Schefter, Rappaport, whoever you want, but it's got to be a major, McAfee, even if you want, major outlet. Do an interview about this, prep yourself, explain how all in you are about Chicago. Yep. And then be honest. Don't try to lie or undersell what happened leading up to it. Explain your reservations and why. Do it in a very calm manner, that it's not about being a bear. It was being about what was happening there at the time. Look what ended up occurring, right? And we were concerned, but everything's different now. We're good. I want to be here, because if you don't, this is just going to follow you. You guys are in a meat grinder of a division. Like, if things go wrong, or if the offense isn't that well, they're going to blame you. They're not going to blame the coach because he has too much success in the past. They're going to blame you. So this is going to go one of 2 ways. You better ingratiate yourself with Chicago right now if you really want to be there, because if you don't, you better be good, or this is going to follow you every week. And then the Bears might go, trust me, the Lions had success with a immobile pocket quarterback and just go, let's trade him now. There's going to be a line out the door to get him. And guess what? If they trade you, you have less say in where you go, because you're under contract for 3 years. Because you're under contract for 3 years, you will have no say where you end up. And you could very easily end up in a place you really don't want to be, and they're not going to care. So I'm telling you, Caleb, this is the crossroads year. You need to address this. You need to get some serious PR help to message it correctly. You need to explain why you want to be in Chicago very badly. Get everybody back on your side, because no one's going to believe you from here forward. As a fail-safe for, you go 14-3, everybody's going to love you. Right. Assuming you don't, because I don't think you will in that division, and I don't think you will with a first-time head coach. Watch out. Because if you guys are 8-9 and you don't have some great games and the offense isn't ranked in the top 10, people are going to be talking about you, and the Bears might get real squirrely about you, especially if Johnson thinks he needs somebody who runs his offense on time. So that's my advice to you now. You need to get out in front of this immediately. You need to do interviews. You need to get prepped up, and you got to talk to big outlets one-on-one for like 30 minutes and answer all of this.
No, and I mean, here's what it ultimately is too. And I think this reared its head last year with these 2 fan bases. You and I talk about it all the time after that Hail Mary, that leading up to that week, there was this animosity from Bears fans, this insecurity from Bears fans. That's really what it was.
Yes.
Of, oh, Caleb's better. And we were like, why are you coming after us? If we both have our guys, who cares? Like, we're happy for you guys if you're happy for us. And there was this weird insecurity of like, our guy's better, blah, blah, blah. Well, he's supposed to be better. You drafted him first overall, but we were kind of like, we don't care. We have our guy, right? Then the Hail Mary happened and it broke them, right? They completely went off the edge. They had that game in Detroit, like I mentioned, where he didn't call the timeout and their season spiraled. What you have to do if you're the Williams family here as well is you do have to lean into, well, we saw the history with the Bears organization and we just, we weren't as comfortable, because I know the Bears fan base, they're not going to like that. But I know if the fan base here in Washington heard any player, not even a quarterback, any player go, well, yeah, look at the history in Washington. Why would I want to go there? Most of us would just go, yeah, you're right. Like we would agree with that for the most part. And granted, I get it. They have new head coach, new ownership, whatever here. But you have to lean into that a little bit, because at that point, too, you can't really defend it if you're the fans or the media, too, because the organization has been bad for as long as it's been. So I'm leaning into that if I'm the Williams family. And eventually, Caleb has to re-quote himself and go, I did want to turn it around here in Chicago. That was a part of why I eventually wanted to come here. And that's going to smooth it over. They got to do it right now, though. So by the time training camp and OTAs and all that other crap is done, then it's like done and over with.
Here's the other thing you cannot do, okay? And I've done this too long. Do not do a press conference first. Right. Do not do that. Yep. If you have an opened up press conference, it's going to be a bunch of people shouting questions. He's going to say something wrong. You got to do something. Pick whoever Stephen A. Smith, Pat McAfee, Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter. Just pick a big place. Then pick whoever you think the big person of Chicago is, okay? Yep. And do 2 solo interviews, 1 national, 1 local, and then you could have the press conference, because the teeth out of the press conference will be taken out of it if he's already answered a lot of these questions in these 2 spots. But you don't want to piss off everybody who covers the team, because they're going to want to talk to him too, and they got to get their bite at the apple of it. You do that afterwards, okay? Afterwards, and let them all have a press conference with him, but he'll have answered everything at that point, and therefore it won't be redundant, and it won't be as, I think, shock and awe as it would be. You throw him up on a podium today to answer questions about this in front of a mob of reporters, it's going to get worse, because he will unwittingly say something he doesn't want to say that's going to make it worse. And I would lean into, if I were him, I know what the headline quote is, but if you read the quote about when I met with the team, I decided I really want to be here and I really want to do it for Chicago. That's the part I want to emphasize to all of you, that yes, there were some pre-draft reservations that we had about going anywhere. And we talked about a lot of different things, and Chicago happened to have the first pick. But once we met, we wanted to be here. Whether that's true or not, that has to be your message now. Because if it isn't, this is going to follow him. It's going to go sideways, and he's going to end up having a bad career there and getting traded. I already know it.
This is also the time of the year where you announce your like Chicago youth football camps. Like you do a couple of these things too to get out there, because then you at least go, well, if I hated Chicago so much, why would I be doing these free camps or whatever? Like, you know how this PR works. Like, this is what he's got to start doing as well a little bit. Also be around in the city. And here's the thing. Here's the funny part too. I know we didn't talk about it much on this show, but I talked about it on my show about that event that was happening in Florida. And the SUV of Caleb Williams was him getting out with 3 models out of that SUV. And then it was Jaden Daniels getting out with his mom and one other woman who I don't know who it is. Yeah. All I know, though, is the narrative all of a sudden. That's why you don't do things like that, because then you go, well, if you're going to something with 3 different women, like how committed are you to Chicago? Like those are the little things that get thrown back in your face. I want to say that like right out now, like he has to also be very, very conscious of what his image looks like at this moment in time too, because it's going to get thrown back at him if they have a 2-1 or a 2-4 start or whatever.
What's crazy is he can't get right. He does something like that, and everybody's like, "Oh my God, look where his priorities are." And if he paints his fingernails, then they go, "Oh my God, look what this." Sure. Like he can't win. Like he can't win. So it's why he's got to get in front of this. He's got to get in front of it now. All right, let me take a quick break. Bray watch the show. He's be at 6:30 at Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. We haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. Obviously, I did practically the whole show yesterday on the release of the schedule yesterday. And, there's a couple things that are abundantly clear. And I actually saw Mike North, who was doing the scheduling forever. He's been doing a bunch of interviews about the scheduling because it's gotten so complicated with all different windows that are up there. And one of the things that was asked was, Cam Ward's the number 1 overall pick. The Titans are not in one single primetime game the entire season. They're not in one standalone game. They're not in one primetime game, like nothing. And here's the number 1 overall pick. And his answer to that was, you don't draft your way into primetime games. You play your way into primetime games. So not only does the NFL not think what happened a year ago with Washington was really, an anomaly or kind of a one-off or a fluke with all the ways that they won, they're basically telling you they are one of the elite teams already because they scheduled them that way. One, they're going to rate better than anybody in the NFL rates, but they're going to rate better than Tennessee just in general. And I agree with this because last year we drafted Jaden Daniels and we weren't putting a million primetime games. We had to earn our way into it. A number of these crazy moments that happened with Daniels, most of the country didn't see. Even the second Philadelphia game, that was a 1:00 game that occurred where he made the crazy play where they had the 5 turnover comeback, jukes Jalen Carter's out of his cleats. Most of America didn't see that, I talked about that Saints game in December off the bye where he made crazy plays in that game. Nobody saw it. It was just a local window game. So you play your way into it. And one of my big takeaways is the NFL has confirmed that they believe the Commanders are one of the 5 elite teams in the NFL heading into the season.
No, I mean, the primetime games, standalone games too, pretty much told you that this league not only saw the Commanders as a good team, but also it's Jaden Daniels. They are making him, one of those poster boys, essentially. I mean, the poster boys are who? Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, all AFC quarterbacks.
Burrow.
Right? Burrow, AFC. So I think what's happening here, too, is the league also realizes there's so much AFC in terms of these primetime games. And granted, don't get me wrong. I'm going to love seeing Mahomes versus Allen on Sunday Night Football or whenever that matchup is and seeing all of these. But I think what's happening here, too, is they finally are like, okay, we have someone in the NFC that is the main focal point of his offense in the NFC, and we're going to go ahead and make him, kind of the star. Because I do think, go look at the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is very, very good. Don't get me wrong, but he's got the best running back and the best roster around him, right? He's not the superstar that Jaden can be. I'm not even putting him in the same category yet, but he's not that same quarterback. The Lions are really good. Jared Goff is not this, amazing quarterback that they're going to push as the poster child. Go look at, Darnold in Seattle. He was really good with the Vikings, but we all know that's dangerous to even think that he's going to be that good. I think what's happening here is the league goes, we finally have an NFC bona fide star that is running the show on his side of things, and they're giving him the push all the way to primetime.
Well, I mean, listen, to the point of you play your way into primetime games. They did it with Detroit. Detroit played their ways into it. They were in a million primetime games a year ago, and guess what? They went 15-2. The NFL ended up being really right about them. They're saying they believe the Commanders are one of the 2, 3, 4 best teams in the league because they wouldn't have put them in these windows like this if they didn't think that. Now, obviously, you got to play the season. Their schedule is hard, and injuries always play a role with anybody's season. So hopefully, that will, be the bug for the Commanders this year, like it would be for any other team. But this is very validating for anybody outside of this area. And it's really funny how the Eagles fans are freaking out about it. We talked about earlier, the Bears fans were really weird heading into the game with Jaden versus Caleb because they were just trying to convince themselves that Caleb was better, even though all evidence was Jaden was having such a better rookie season. And we were just so confident that we had our guy that I think we were just kind of I don't even know what you're talking about. Right. You're convinced, you're trying to convince yourself, that you're not convincing us. You're trying to convince yourself that you ended up with the right guy because you had the choice. We didn't. You had the choice. This is who you took. This is who we took because he wasn't available. That's on you guys. The Eagles fans are funny too. They got weird about the Washington win in December. They didn't want to credit Washington. They were like, well, Jalen Hurts got hurt. They could not understand what kind of comeback that was. They wouldn't come around to it. And then I've seen a lot of, why are they on so many standalone windows? Hate to break it to you guys. And I don't even know what you're upset about. You won the Super Bowl and lost one time since October. I would think you're pretty confident in the group that you have. Why are you jealous of this? Because that's how they're acting. It's strange.
No, it's definitely a weird one. I'll say this too, though. we talked about it before the schedule dropped 2 days ago, that the matchups were going to be primetime worthy as well. Like, they were playing the AFC West. They're playing the NFC North. Their own division is worth primetime games as well. Like,
I'll buy that the Cowboys are going to be better. Like, I'll buy that.
Agree. Like, I look at that last month of the season and just think, oh man, like they're going to have, like, that's going to be a tough stretch for everybody involved, not just the Commanders. And here's the thing too. The Commanders had, a point in the season where every week it was a last second win and they were winning. Like, that opens up some eyes. It doesn't mean that they were just lucky to get all of these wins. Should some of them probably skewed the other way? Probably in another universe, they only win 3 of the 5 at the last second or whatever it could be. But we've already seen it here, and we joked about it too. Remember, we joked about it the last 6 weeks of the season. We had other fan bases and other media going, oh, well, he's just a rookie quarterback. How good could he be? And we were like, you don't know ball. Like, you're not watching the games if you're just going to discount him like that. This means the league is also watching him going, this guy's great. We need to start pushing him a little bit more. And there's one other thing here. There's one other factor here too that I think, no one's here talking about it locally, but the way media is consumed now, especially local media, is completely different. And you and I would be in agreement, and I think the fan base would be in agreement. The Commanders are not as popular as they were even 10 years ago, I would say, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. You know what the NFL is doing here? I think there's also a slight little sliver of all of this happening of going, DC, we need you to start paying attention again too, because you're not going to be able to get away from this team if you like the NFL and you live in that area. I think there's a slight kind of narrative that they're trying to push as well of, you have this really good quarterback and we're trying to rebuild the fan base and you won't even be able to escape them because you'll have to watch them on primetime. I think there's a little bit of that to help rebuild the fan base.
There was a flip in the fan base and the metrics and the interest by the middle of last year where people realized what was going on.
Right.
And there was the clean slate part of it that, they're now owned by somebody else. It's a whole new front office. It's a whole new everything. And I think, it takes a little while, but like it did kick in. I'm around it every day. So I'm sitting there like after Cincinnati, I was like, y'all better tune in because this is crazy. And it took a few more weeks because most people have said to me it was the Hail Mary. And the Hail Mary was probably for casual fans a viral moment. Holy crap. Like what's going on here? Look at their record. Oh my God, I've heard a lot about this quarterback. He's amazing. Like that's coming around. So.
And I think what's happening here too, though, is like, let's say you did hop on the bandwagon last year and it was, they made it to the NFC Championship and they got blown out. There's still a ton of people in the fan base that are not in the fan base, but casual fans and maybe even in this area going, oh, well, that's a 1-year fluke. Like we saw them make the playoffs every now and then under Dan. Like, how do I know that this is different, right? That don't watch the games as closely as you and I. Well, the league is basically telling you, go watch them because we're going to put them in all these windows because we believe they're going to be that good. I think there is a little slight bit of, we have this kind of franchise here that we can rebuild if they're this good in these primetime windows. And I think they're giving them that opportunity.
Real quick, I always go through to see where are the good turnarounds, where are the bad turnarounds in the schedule for them. There's a lot more bad ones than good ones, obviously, this year. They are playing 4 teams off of a bye. Now, one of them is Denver, who happens to be the same bye as Washington. So that's fair is fair. Still, we don't have that advantage against anybody, okay? And there will be 3 teams that will play Washington this year that will be coming off their bye. Oddly enough, one of them is the Bears. And the Bears were coming off a bye last year when the Hail Mary occurred. All right. So here's what it is early. We do catch a break early week 3. The Raiders are playing Monday Night Football. Washington is playing Thursday night, week 2 in Green Bay. So they're going to it's a quick turnaround to play the Packers, but they'll have a long break to play the Raiders, and the Raiders are going to have a short week and come across the country. That always reads really well. So like, not only do we think that might be a weaker opponent and it's here, but they're going to be on a short week. We're going to have way more rest. So not going to be a lot of excuses for the Commanders there. The Bears are off of the bye, and Washington is off of a West Coast trip to the Chargers. That's not good. Okay, that's a bad turnaround. Seattle is off of a bye, and Washington is off a short week. Kansas City on the road. That's not good, right? So that's a quick. Granted, both of these are home games, but it's either like they're off a bye, we're off short weeks, or West Coast trips. Like that's not good. The Washington-Denver thing is they share the same bye. Washington will be coming back from Spain, though, so it's going to be a little bit different. Let's see. The Giants are off of a bye. Washington will have played a road game in Minnesota. I don't think that's that big of a deal. It is late in the season. We'll see where the Giants are at that point. But again, like they're catching a break. That's not a good break. Washington's going to come off of that game. When they get to Philadelphia, when they take on Dallas, Washington's going to play Philadelphia on Saturday. Dallas is going to play on Sunday. And then they're playing Dallas on Thursday. So they get the extra day.
Yep.
So that's a good thing. Philly is not playing on Christmas Day. So the finale, Washington will have more time to get around to the finale, but let's see what the finale is, because either one of those two teams may have nothing to play for. So we'll have to see, but there's actually a decent turnaround there. So the good turnaround games for Washington is they get the Raiders. Minnesota, actually, when they play Minnesota, Washington will have been off the Denver game. They're going to have played at Seattle on a short week. So that's a decent turnaround there. Dallas on Christmas, they'll have an extra day on Dallas, and Dallas has to travel here. And Philly's second go around, because we'll have played on Christmas on a Thursday. They'll have played on a Sunday. And so we'll get an extra turnaround there, but we'll see what it means. Bad ones, Bears are off a bye. We're not. Seattle's off a bye. We're not. Giants off a bye. We're not. And the first Dallas game is not a great turnaround either for Washington. And Dallas has a better turnaround there. So it's not like the NFL tried to hook them up, tried to put them in all of these like high profile showcased moments, but the schedule is not great for that type of stuff. The fact that they're playing four teams off of their bye, albeit one of them is theirs as well, is a miss by the NFL. And Washington does not get the advantage of having their bye against anybody else because they're playing a team that's also off the bye at the same time. So that's not great.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, though, off of 3 of those, they're at home. So it's not like they're traveling off of teams at a bye. And I'll say this, I'd rather take all of those mid-season ones than having it at the end of the season where they do get a little bit of that break where they get the extra day against Dallas. Then they get the extra break against the Eagles. I'm okay with that, actually. Like, I think it evens itself out a little bit more than in years past, where it was just straight up they're traveling to a team on the bye or whatever. I'm with you. Like, this is a miss by the NFL. But at the same time, I think you can nitpick other parts of the schedule that they're going to get a little bit of a break towards as well. And not only that, you can make the argument that Eagles stretch, they get a pretty good break during that, and it's probably going to be the most important stretch of the season. So I don't know. I'll kind of take that and then have them, for the most important stretch, have a little bit of a break for that one.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll say, and I talked about this a lot yesterday, the 2 Eagles games being week 16 and 18.
What are we doing? What are we doing here? I mean,
one of them can't be week 10? Like, what?
I mainly hate this, too, because if you're the NFL, there's always this narrative of, oh, well, like, who have you beaten? Like, remember the Commanders had this through, 10 weeks last year before, they played the Eagles, or the Eagles were the only good team they played or whatever. That becomes a narrative. Well, the only, great team, tier S team they're going to play is the Raiders. Or not the Raiders, is the Chiefs in week 8 or 9, I think it is, week 8. And, that's your measuring stick game. You don't get to play the Eagles until the end of the year. They're going to be a completely different team at that point. So I think that's a miss by the NFL. And honestly, it's a disservice to putting that game on primetime halfway through the year or part-time through the year, because that's going to be the rivalry soon. And I don't know. That's just a miss by them. I don't like it at all, especially because one of those games, that might not matter. That week 18 might not matter for either team. That's a possibility.
All right, let me take a quick break. Bram, watch the show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, I did not leave myself a lot of time to say goodbye to the Capital season, so we'll spend some time next week talking about what's next and everything. But it did end last night at home, Game 5. It wasn't a fluke goal, but it was a really bad angle goal by Svechnikov with under 2 minutes to go, and then an empty netter made it 3-1. This was, oddly enough, I will say this for the Caps, because I was very concerned that they were going to kind of no-show, which would not really be their DNA, but the way they had been beaten up to that point in the series, I gave them no hope of turning it around and actually winning 3 in a row. I was just hoping for a good effort last night, and I thought they gave it, albeit they did not get many real chances. They just weren't so overwhelmingly dominated, like the way they had been. So this was a typical nip and tuck game, but Washington was incapable of getting any sustained offense at all, and then getting very many real chances on net. And so they opened themselves up to a team that just throws the puck at the net all the time. Every once in a while gets a break. And that was the difference last night. But this was a series where they were outclassed. Honestly, they were. And it's rare you say that about this team through the years, but they were.
No, I mean, this series went exactly how I thought it would go in terms of the progression of each game. I said it going into this series. First period team is the Caps. They play really well in the first period, get gradually worse in the second, and then it's hold on to your butts in the third period. Well, when they stopped cashing in the first period, that was kind of panic for me. If they weren't scoring in the first, it was going to be a tough series to win. Here's the other thing that happened too. The goalie matchup flipped partway through the series too. Logan Thompson should have been a better goaltender than Anderson. Anderson ended up getting these incredible saves to start off all of these games. He wasn't even that good last night, but then stepped it up in the late second, early third period. And all of a sudden, the Hurricanes were back last night. This was an unfortunate, end of the season for Thompson, who I thought had a pretty good season, but then kind of fell apart in that second round against the Hurricanes. They were also, though, to not knock it too much on Thompson, the Capitals couldn't sustain momentum in any of these games. And I really point to game 4 as the one where the Caps couldn't put together 3 shifts to even stop the momentum down in Raleigh. Last night, when they were down or when they were tied heading into the third period, all I thought was, this is going to end poorly because the Hurricanes are going to make the push. They can't make it. And when they didn't score on that power play in the beginning, I knew the scoring touch was just kind of dead. And look, this is, as I said, too, this isn't the Penguin series where everything was so razor thin and you feel just terrible for the guys afterwards because either team could have won. And when you saw those Penguins Cap series, the Penguins won the cup all 3 times they went through the Caps. The Caps won their cup when they went through the Penguins. I didn't feel the same after the series with the Canes. The Canes were far and away the better team. They dominated the Caps almost this entire series. They didn't have an answer for him, and that's where we stand today.
It wasn't close. Next week, we'll spend some time talking about what's next, which actually I think the future is very bright. The Backstrom contract's off the books. The Oshie contract's off the books. There's only 1 year left of Carlson and Ovechkin, which obviously, I would assume it's going to be the end for both of them. That's a lot of money that's tied up. All of a sudden, you're going to see the inroads of what the new look team is going to be. And they still were able to thread the needle of being very competitive. So when they were spinning afterwards, this was an extremely memorable season for so many reasons. It did allow me to take a step back because I hated how they played in this series. Thought they were completely, utterly dominated and at times punked by this team. And it was a really tough way to go out. But if you do take a step back, this was one of the most memorable years the organization has had. And to go back to the beginning, they had no expectations not to do anything like this other than to chase this record and maybe be a marginal playoff team. They far exceeded that. So I'm willing to take a step back and give them the golf clap, even as the season ended in a real thud in that series.
One other thing that I think put in perspective this season for me was this team was, dominant and very good for so long. And then they had a 2-year kind of reset there, right?
Yeah.
Go look at a team like the Rangers that were hot, last year, number 1 seed, swept the Caps out, of the playoffs last year. And it literally fell apart on them this season. This made me thankful for the organization that they took a 2-year reset and they pounced right back into that 1 seed. This was the year for me of don't take it for granted because you saw what the Rangers did by hitting the reset button after the Tom Wilson horrifying act of violence 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it all came to fruition last year and it fell apart on them in literally 1 season. The fact that this organization knows how to find players can win. This was the one where I go, you know what? They are in good hands moving forward after this era does end.
Yeah, I do. We'll revisit it and what it looks like in the future next week. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Brave Watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.